An atheist will come and attack a Christian with this common question.
Attack is such a strong word, but I do understand the need to justify your persecution complex. In actuality, atheists will challenge the claims of Christians in a number of different ways. Sometimes it's with an internal critique, sometimes it's pointing out an invalid syllogistic structure, and sometimes it's just exposing faulty logic. And sometimes it's just debunking a claim with external criticism. Which one I use will depend entirely upon the claim that you have for us today.
You, Christian, believe that your God is all love and all powerful.
Immediately referencing the omnibenevolent attribute that many Christians define their God as possessing means that this is probably a response to the tried and true problem of evil. But I don't want to assume, so let's see what this theist has for us.
Our reply will be yes, because that's the truth. Our God is all love and all powerful.
Okay, you claim that your God exists and is both omnibenevolent and omnipotent. So what is this particular attack from atheists that you have such an issue with?
Okay, then how come this God of yours, who is all love and all powerful, allowing for evil to infiltrate and expand so rapidly on a global level?
Called it.
Where is his all power? Where is his all love to come and save and put an end to this evilness?
Well, that's kind of it. A good way to look at it really is David Hume's summary of the Epicurean trilemma. If God is unable to prevent evil, then he is not omnipotent. If God is not willing to prevent evil, then he is not omnibenevolent. And if God is both willing and able to prevent evil, then why does evil exist? I myself like to sum it up by pointing out that the very existence of evil is logically contradictory with the existence of an omni-God, because an omni-God would not require suffering to accomplish any task that it, in its omniscience and omnipotence, would know how and be able to teach to its creation in a manner logically consistent with its omnibenevolent nature.
Now, this question that is asked by an atheist attacking a Christian has an element of assumption.
Well, yeah, it's an internal critique, so in order to make it, you first have to assume the truth of the theist's position.
So I'll answer the questioner with a question, not an answer.
Well, the reason you're answering a question with a question is because you don't really have an answer. There is no answer to the logical or evidentiary problems of evil. The best you can hope to do is either shift the burden of proof to the atheist, or dishonestly redefine your God, or even the terms good and evil themselves, in order to get out from underneath the problem.
So I'll ask you, my dear friend, when you assume there is evil, aren't you also assuming there is good?
Atheists don't assume that there is evil, and we certainly don't assume that there is good. We know that there are actions which we as a society have collectively agreed upon to define as good and evil. Typically, evil actions are those actions which harm society or consistently reduce the well-being or personal freedoms of others, and there are actions that we arbitrarily define as good, those that benefit society and improve the well-being of others. So it's not an assumption that we're making. Actions exist, and we agree upon what we call those actions based upon the motivations and the consequences.
Because if they say there is no good, then I'll ask them, how did you know this is evil if you hadn't seen good?
While an atheist may acknowledge that defining an act as good or evil is arbitrary and subjective to the individual and the culture and the society, it doesn't mean that good and evil don't exist.
How do you know it is dark if you hadn't seen the light?
So, evil is the opposite of good, and these are subjectively determined by individuals and cultures and societies. That doesn't answer the problem.
How do you know it's night if you've never seen the day? So when you assume there is evil, aren't you also assuming there is good?
Like I said before, it's not an assumption. They are arbitrary designations that we as a society composed of individuals agree upon.
They will say yes. Well, when you are assuming there is also good, aren't you also assuming there is a moral law?
Sneaky bugger. He's not actually referring to good anymore. What he's actually referring to is objective good. Essentially, he's now claiming that atheists assume that objective good exists, meaning that a thing is good regardless of influence, opinion, circumstance, or interpretation, and there you see how the trick is done. Because he's made the unspoken switch from good to objective good, and he defines his God not only as being objectively good, but also being the source of and arbiter of what is objectively good. So if the atheist assumes that objective good exists, then they assume that the God exists. But we don't assume that objective good or objective evil exists. That's an assumption that the theist makes in their worldview, which is why the problem of evil is so important, because how can objective evil exist when such a thing is not only logically contradictory, but also logically unnecessary, given the very attributes that God is defined as having? What this theist has done is dishonestly shifted terminology in an attempt to force the atheist into arguing from the theist worldview, because he can't actually address the problem of evil.
Because if there is no moral law, how did you know this was good and this was evil?
Like I said, we arbitrarily define it as such, and the subjective determination of what is good and what is evil is evident throughout all of human history. The only difference is now we as a species are so interconnected that we can almost come to a global consensus on what we consider to be good and evil. But whether it's a small tribe or the entire planet itself, the determinations are still subjective. So be sure to keep in mind that for every tactic we atheists have to break down how theistic arguments fail, they have just as many underhanded tactics to try and escape the logical critiques of their irrational worldview. Be safe, be excellent to each other. I'll see you next time.